Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
And today is April 19th, not 1775, but 2022. So
Right.
that must be significant for some reason, right? So,
I don't know. Yeah.
well, they've been doing all these reenactments and things at the North
Right.
Bridge and downtown Lexington, Concord,
Yeah.
whatever, so it's actually kind of,
I
fun
guess
and
it's fun.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So let's see. So what's to say here today?
Well, it's been a while since we've met. It's actually been three.
No, just 2 weeks.
No, just two. But there wasn't a meeting this last night. But there was a meeting a week and a half ago. Right.
Yeah, things are starting to kind of happen kind of fast. I think our local city council is having more committee meetings finally that, they were kind of slow to get started, but they seem to be scheduling quite a few of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, things are definitely taking off here.
Yeah.
I think one actually thing I'd say right off the bat that I found kind of interesting was, they've had this lingering business about board appointments.
Right. Yes.
Pursuant to the change in the charter.
Yeah.
There were those 3 changes to the charter this past
because
November.
14,000 people voted for it out of how many? Remember, I asked you that.
About 70,000 voters. So it's really about
70,000 registered voters.
Yeah, I mean, but you could argue that that even if 20,000 people voted out of 70,000, if it was a representative sample, it would still represent the will of the people.
Well, but it was 21,000 total, and only 14,000 something voted for that.
Right. So my personal feeling about that is that the real issue there was not whether 2/3 of the people voted in favor of the charter amendments. The fact is that there really was never enough time to actually inform the public about them. So, I don't know how to really interpret it. But anyway, it's the law, so that's the way it goes.
Well, I don't call it 2/3, but anyway, we can bibble about the math. I'm not going to quibble with you, Mr. Math. But anyway,
right. But
it wasn't a mandate. Let's put it that way.
No, but what happens then is that they did have to craft some ordinance language in order to implement some of them. So the one had to do with the city manager annual review process. Right. And I think
that was the second ballot question.
Right. There's also the one about the every 10 years, beginning with a year that ends with 2, which means this year.
Which is now. Yeah.
Or reviewing a general, not just those 3 quick amendments to the charter, but a general review
of the whole charter. Right.
Yeah. Right. So
it's a lot of stuff on their plate to do.
Right. And then the other one was the review of board appointments.
Right. Which is what they had a meeting about. Well, they had 2 meetings, but that was one that they had on the 12th. I think. Yeah. Right.
So and so there's still, they haven't approved, they haven't passed an ordinance. They've only made referrals as to what they want to do. But I think for the ones having to do with city boards and commissions, that appointment, it was a kind of a curious discussion they had, to be perfectly honest, in that it seemed to be the case that neither the councilors nor the manager wanted to put anybody an appointee into the position of being publicly rejected after post-appointment. Right. But that in itself is sort of strange, because if the manager is the person making the appointments, not the council, then is it really appropriate and consistent with open meeting laws and the charter for the city councilors to basically get to kind of pre-choose who's acceptable prior to appointment?
Yeah, that's tricky. It's tricky. You're right.
Yeah, but I think that at least the chair of that committee, Councilor Mallon, seemed to indicate that this next meeting, which is coming up, I believe, on this coming Monday. I don't think we have any holidays coming up right away.
It's scheduled, really? Because I didn't see anything for government.
There should be one for, the agenda is not out yet until Thursday night, but there seemed to be an indication that these appointments that are resting on the table waiting for
those
action,
appointments. I thought you meant that. Okay, yeah.
They will likely wave them through. for this
Uh-huh.
time here,
All right.
as long as they have kind of an understanding about what's to happen. But we'll see what
Right.
happens. I don't really know if they're going to
Well,
follow through on that. But
what was interesting is that the notes I have in that meeting, it said that a handful of boards and commissions do not fall under the new charter amendment, and that so in other words, there's 33. It said 33 boards and commissions. 20 are committee working in advisory groups, i.e., the recycling advisory group, I guess the pedestrian committee, those things, right? So,
right. But the
what
city
does that mean
solicitor.
then? Yeah.
Well, I thought it was really ambiguous what was being said.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right.
I wasn't particularly happy that she said the city solicitor said five, something, was it 5 committees that are actually not subject to the review, but she didn't name which ones.
Oh,
I
she
think
said 5? I didn't hear that.
well,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
not sure actually. It might have been 5, but
You said a handful, so maybe that's what you
right, a
meant.
handful. So to me, certainly
Right.
the election commission, I believe, is guided by a different rule, you know,
As
because it
is the
was.
license commission,
And the
probably, right?
license commission, you become a license commission by virtue of the position you hold as either the police commissioner, the
Right.
executive director of the
Right.
license commission, or the fire commission,
Right.
fire chief. So those are not ordinary appointments that would be
Right.
subject to council review.
Right.
So I would say
Right.
election commission, license commission, but where the others fall that are not subject, I'm not so sure. I mean, there are 2 commissions that are established under a different kind of act, like the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority and the Housing Authority, that were always subject to council
Right.
review.
Huh.
So those ones are still subject to council review,
All right.
right? So those would not be exceptional. So I don't know what other ones that might be talking about. And there is this question: if something is purely advisory and holds no regulatory
Waiting,
role at
right,
all.
regulatory. So that's, well, is the planning board regulatory or is it
Yes.
just, it is?
Yeah, I mean, in some cities and towns, some of the authority, like for the issuance of special permits,
Right.
yeah, they actually would go to the local elected officials, like city councilors or its equivalent in
I
a
see.
different place. That has been delegated to the
I
planning
see.
board.
They issue
you know,
special. I thought the board of, okay.
Yeah,
The
so
Board of
what
Zoning Appeal doesn't
no,
issue?
no,
Oh.
no, they just issue variances.
Oh,
But
okay.
and Board of Zoning Appeal variances, well, I should say, the planning board is often asked to opine on Board of Zoning Appeal cases, but ultimately the authority lies for variances with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So you're telling me special permits are not in the purview of the Board of Zoning Appeal? It's just
I don't want
planning
to.
board?
Well, I know
I-
that there are special permits that are part of the zoning code that you can,
Right,
you know, so, and it's actually quite common that if there's a big project underway,
right,
that you can either go to build something as of right,
right.
or you can build it also essentially as of right by seeking a special permit, which is an allowance. It's not a variance. It's actually a way in which you can build a somewhat
Okay.
larger project, as long as
Okay.
you get you have to buy into some kind of approval of like design and such with the planning
I
board. So
see.
it's
So,
it's generally considered a good thing that gives the city a little bit more say so in making a good project. That's really what a special
okay.
permit
So are you
is
saying
about.
that a variance is stricter in its meaning?
Well, I mean, a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals is by design, and really under state law is really
Uh-huh.
there to address hardship and unusual
Oh, okay.
circumstances
All
that
right.
where the
Okay,
zoning.
that's good to know. I really didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, the zoning code is, I think it's generally recognized that it can't be perfect, right? There will
Right,
always be odd shaped lots or
right. Okay.
situations where there's just no way to get a good
A
outcome
good
unless you
remedy.
basically
Okay. I see.
appeal. And sometimes people will appeal based on hardship. You know, they say, I need to do this extension on the building because of my aging parents and whatever,
Okay.
and all the
All right.
abutters are okay with it. So
Right.
can we make an exemption for that? And then that's your typical variance. I think a lot of people misunderstand this. For
I
example, there
know.
was
Yeah.
a project that was brought before the Board of Zoning Appeals, a sort of controversial one up at Walden and Mass Ave. And the issue there was that wasn't seeking a special permit, it was seeking many variances.
Oh,
And
okay.
and the issue there was not whether it was a good project that met design guidelines or whatever. It's just that they were
Yeah.
seeking so many variances that the Board of Zoning Appeal couldn't reasonably just give approval without them coming back. So the petitioners filed, they withdrew their filing
Uh-huh.
and will presumably come back either when the zoning law
Okay.
has changed or, when they can, better meet the,
Weren't they trying to use the 40B kind of a definition?
for a comprehensive permit. I think,
That was the
actually, I
problem
think
there. I
that might
think
have been,
the issue, and then
yeah,
people fought that. They thought that wasn't fair. I don't know.
right. Well,
Very
it
messy. Yeah.
was, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that
Yes.
one because there's, this notion that somehow the Board of Zoning Appeals was using its discretion to deny a project that everybody, or not everybody, but some people thought
Right.
was a
Because
good
it was all going to
project.
be affordable housing. That's
Yeah.
really the issue.
But
Yeah.
but the problem there is not, it's not really the job of the Board of Zoning Appeals to say, well, we're going to just give you all these
Right.
variances because we think
Right.
it's a nice thing.
Right.
You
No,
know,
I
you are,
agree. Yeah.
I mean,
It
it's
has
supposed
to
to meet,
still
yeah, like
meet certain.
hardship, things like that, if,
Yeah.
or just the impossibility of doing otherwise. So, and it just didn't quite pass the stink test on all of those things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it had to
Yeah.
come back, and
Right.
that's all. Nothing, it's really, I don't think it should have even been viewed as controversial at that point. I mean, it'll be back and we'll see what happens. But regarding the boards and commissions, I'm still at a loss to say which ones wouldn't be subject to
True.
city council approval now.
Well, do they have to come back and actually address that? Was that asked?
I think that hopefully when there'll be some greater detail from the
Uh-huh.
city solicitor delineating which boards specifically. And I might even, there's actually scheduled for, I believe it's April 28th. There's a meeting of the Government Operations Committee that is supposed to address possible changes in the council rules. Now, the council rules include not only the name, strange as this may sound, the standing committees of the city council exist only because they're in the city council rules, right? I mean, you could change the different standing committees of the city council, but you'd have to change the rules.
Isn't there a
But
meeting coming up about rules, actually?
yeah,
There
that's
is,
the one
yeah.
on April 28th.
Okay.
But and then there's also one coming late in May about Robert's Rules of Order.
Oh, interesting.
That's not this Robert. Thank you.
No.
But I'll decide. No,
Right. Yeah.
just kidding. Anyway, it's quite possible that the government operations one about council rules, they may want to weave into it some of the rules governing how they will handle things like review of boards
Yeah.
and commission appointments. As
Oh.
opposed to having no rules, and then what are you going to just like everybody who just thumbs up if you like them, thumbs down if you don't. They haven't really established those rules. So maybe there will be an order or something calling for that at this coming Monday's meeting to be more specific about it.
I did think the city presented a very good overview of how they go about recruitment and getting things.
Yes.
Because Brian
Core.
Right, Brian Core and Jennifer, was that her name, or Jessica, somebody else?
think-
From
yeah.
Jennifer Matthews from the Human Rights
Exactly.
Commission. So I thought it was very thorough, very clear that this isn't just, oh, this is a good name, let's do this. So I think that was really important.
Ultimately,
to
I mean,
yeah.
despite all the small talk from counselors and city staff alike,
Right.
I think it's pretty clear and has been from the get-go that this whole business about review of city boards and commissions
Yeah.
really is about some very specific city boards and
Yeah.
commissions
Right.
having to do with whether certain
Housing
housing development
housing and
would
development.
be allowed to
Yep.
proceed. So
Right.
whether that
Yep.
be neighborhood conservation district commissions or
Right.
planning
Right.
board, BZA,
Right.
possibly conservation commission.
That was
could,
met
I
in the
suppose,
historical commission,
and
conservation
historical
commission, the planning board and the board of zoning appeal. I think those are the four
Exactly.
biggies. Yeah.
Yeah. So all this stuff like, is the recycling advisory committee or the
They don't
LGBTQ
care about that.
plus
Yeah.
commission, are they
Right.
going to be subject to review? Seriously doubt it.
Right.
So, I think they just need to be a little more straightforward about that and just say, look, this is what it's really about. And, it's about the council trying to, push its policy direction onto the boards in a much more forceful way, rather than allowing the independent boards and commission members to have as much latitude as arguably they've had up to this point.
And it was brought up, I think, at this meeting about a stipend for people like the planning board.
Yeah, they
And
come
the
around.
city seemed to entertain that, or at least did not say, no, that's not possible.
I know. I've never, I mean, it's possible that there may be some planning board members who, or possible applicants who chose not to apply because it seemed like more time commitment than they were willing to do. But I actually have never heard anyone say that. So I think there may be some make-believe going on here as well.
Well, do you think they're doing it because they think they'll get people that wouldn't serve because they don't have the time to do it? Because then I don't think you're getting the, I don't know. I don't know what the motive is. I mean, it does require a lot of time. So maybe it was just, even
Right.
if
So
it's to pay for their meal out. I don't know. I just.
right. But if for those people who are kind of fans of term limits and
Oh, that's
who
another
are
thing.
who are
Right,
also
yeah,
not fans of people serving for an eternity on a board and commission, the
right.
fact that there might be some heavier workload might actually lead to some turnover because somebody puts in a few years, they're happy to do it, but they don't want to do it forever.
Mhm.
So because it's a lot of work, so they pass the baton to somebody else, and there becomes kind of a natural way of turning
Yeah,
over.
but then again,
because
some
of that.
people would argue on the other side that a lot of people that are older, that have lived here a long time, they're retired, they want to make use of their time, and they do have the time, and they can stay forever. So,
Right,
know,
right, yeah,
well, I
potentially,
don't know.
but
I just want qualified people that understand the city and are not taking a particular biased view. And
exactly.
maybe I'm naive that I think that they're all doing that, but.
Well, if you're
yeah.
naive, then that makes two of us then,
All
because
right,
I
well,
actually agree with you 100% on that.
yeah.
But I
okay.
have never once heard any member of a board and commission raising the issue of it just being too much work, because if that is the case, they
They
leave.
wouldn't have applied, right? They know
Yeah,
what they're getting into.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
and there have been members of the planning board
Yeah.
who have left before their 5-year term is up, and maybe that was their reason for doing so, but they were replaced by somebody else who was good. And I don't really see where this is a problem, but I'll leave it to others to sort of argue that one out. Now, another committee meeting that happened that was relating to the charter changes
Right.
Was a government operations committee meeting of maybe it was 2 weeks ago, can't remember now. And it had to do with the procedure, which apparently has to happen kind of lickety split, of how this review, this
the charter review.
every 10-year
Right.
review of the charter beginning this year.
Right.
Presumably.
Oh, it was the next
review.
day. It was the next day that meeting. Yeah, it was an ordinance meeting.
Right. So I tuned in for part of that, and then I went
Yeah.
back and reviewed the tape just to to get a fuller sense about what they were really talking about there. I did find it kind of curious because you can say, okay, fine, there will be a review committee. So they asked the city solicitor to come back with language about
who's on the committee, right?
Yeah, who should actually be on this committee.
Yeah.
And the language that came back from the city solicitor, I thought was pretty level-headed. It acknowledged the fact that the city council is not the only elected body in the city. There's also an elected school committee.
Oh, right,
And,
yes.
and that there's also a city manager and staff. And there seemed to be a suggestion that there should be some input in the formation of a charter review committee for all three of those. So there was a proposal from the city solicitor to have several members appointed from the school committee. It didn't specify how, but would come from the school committee, or appointments made by the school committee.
But wait a minute, wait. Is the school committee even mentioned in the charter? The school?
Yes.
They are. Okay,
Oh,
all right.
Absolutely. We have two
I thought
elected
that was
bodies.
I thought that was the argument, that they're not even mentioned in the charter. But
Oh, no,
I guess
they're
I heard that
absolutely.
wrong. Okay, so,
Yeah.
but wasn't there objection to that? I seem to remember.
Well, actually, I think maybe what I'm gonna do here is do a little switch over here. Just
Okay,
take
yeah, go to your
a
notes.
quick look
there.
over
Yeah.
here and just to speak to it. So
I
the
didn't quite
ordinance,
follow that, yeah.
right? So the initial proposal from the city solicitor right?
Yeah,
You know, there were a few minor other changes, but
yeah.
it was that there would be a recommendation from the appointments would come from the mayor would be the appointments would come from the school committee, the city manager, and the superintendent of schools. Now, that one came out of nowhere to me about this, but these are like the three chiefs
Where
of
is that?
things.
Where is that written there?
It's section 2.02.100 part B, the second
Oh, I
part.
see.
It's actually replaced
Okay,
by red,
okay.
right?
Appointed the mayor, special.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, it was supposed to be appointed by the mayor as the, you know, basically appointing
Oh,
a
I
certain
see.
number of people
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
representing the city council's choices. There would be some from the superintendent of schools representing the school department's choices, and then some from the
yeah,
managers. Now, I kind of knew that wasn't going to fly because so
yeah.
much of this charter change business is about power
Yep,
and the
yep,
desire for city councilors to gain
yep.
more power. And there was no way they were going to
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, sure, the charter review will be, you know, subject to some review, some membership appointed by the city manager and from the superintendent of schools. So in the end, they modified it. They settled on a variable number between 12 and 18 registered voters, none of whom could be elected officials,
Mm-hmm.
which was expected. And
Past though? What about past elected officials?
that would
Doesn't
be fine.
specify.
That would be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then instead of having appointment power from anyone else but city councils, it would all come to the mayor. Basically, the mayor would
Huh.
appoint an ad hoc committee of 4 councilors, and
Yeah.
then those 4 councilors would decide who the 12 to 18 registered voters of the cities would be who would
Ah.
comprise it,
Well, this is
right?
kind of what they did with the screening committee for the city manager. In
I
fact,
think
that was
that
brought up.
that was kind of
Paul
a
Toner, I think, brought
motivation,
that up.
yeah, for
Yeah.
that. But
Right.
the thing that I find a little potentially problematic, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at
Yeah.
as anybody as being a bad guy here,
Yeah.
but basically what it means is that depending on who the mayor is at the time, and this
Sure.
one would be the current mayor, the mayor basically would be able to choose the 4
What
people who would
counselors,
then
right?
choose everybody. So fundamentally, the mayor gets to then have outsized influence on who's going
Well,
to review the
yeah, but I
charter.
bet if they're being a smart mayor, they'll pick sort of a balanced
Well,
group.
you might,
Unless all your counselors are.
you know,
wonderful.
I've spent most of my life trying to be very optimistic that
Uh-huh.
good people do all the right things for all the
Yeah.
best reasons. But you know, so much of this has to do with power, and
Well,
you
who
know,
picked
politics is about power.
But who picked the current screening committee for the city manager?
For
Wasn't that up
this,
to some counselors?
there were some councilors who were involved in doing that.
And
Yeah,
who
and
chose those counselors?
the mayor,
Okay,
right?
so
And
do you think that was not done?
well, but that's basically to choosing the employee of the city council as opposed to changing the charter for the
Okay, but
entire city.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah, which governs everybody, including school, you know, school committee, but really it affects us all.
I
You know,
liked Paul Toner's comment is about is this going to be an activist or a neutral committee? I think he
you
was.
know, I think that was kind of getting to the real
Yeah,
point of it, which
right.
is that,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Right,
you know, if you, I mean, if a mayor wanted to,
right.
that mayor could basically say, well, the only people I'm going to appoint will be the people who I've had a private conversation with, and I know what they want to do. And then they would then select the 12 to 18 people. And they would, you know, for example, let's just say, for instance,
Yeah.
that you had a mayor who wanted to you wanted to have a directly elected mayor that's directly
Oh, well,
elected by
that's a
the
good
people.
point.
And the
Yeah.
mayor just wanted that because the mayor felt that that would work well for the
But
current
that's
mayor.
so obvious, though. I mean,
You know, listen, I think it's relatively obvious, but you know, if it, you know, sometimes obvious things and even power grabs are often obfuscated by process, you know, so we'll see how it works out, you know, and we'll see how the
all right,
12 to 18 people are.
say you had a committee and all that. Eventually, wouldn't you have to have a vote of the city? Wouldn't that be a ballot question?
Well, ultimately, yeah, the thing is that
Yeah.
any change to the charter ultimately would have to be put for the people. But as we
Right.
saw last October,
Right.
unless you have something really heinous and objectionable, I think the voters will say, sure, fine. we'll go for
I
that.
agree with you. You're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right
So
about that.
I don't think that that's a really,
Yeah.
that's a, unless
And
somebody
again,
organized.
it would be very few people that would vote for something and people would say this is a mandate. So there
Right.
you go.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
mean, personally, there's a part of me says, well, if this heads south toward a direction where basically the counselors are
yeah,
going to select people who are going to then, who are pre-chosen to give them all 4-year terms rather than 2-year terms, or a directly elected mayor, or something like that, because some individuals just want that.
be careful what you wish for. There's always another,
Yeah, yeah,
strong mayors do not always like city councilors that, I
yeah.
mean, it can
But
go so many ways.
well, if we go in that, and then eventually, then they would be put in
Mhm.
front of the voters. Yes, but at
Yeah.
that point, I think the voters will tend
Right.
to. I mean, we don't do the best job of civic education in this city, so
No.
the voters will say, "Yeah, sure." As I
Well,
think it's kind of the way we
I
go.
think that's a product of what we do with civic education in general.
I
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. But there is another way to change charters too, which is, if they really start heading down that road, which is for citizens to basically come together to try and do it as well. One of
Hmm.
the objections I had with this charter review being put on the ballot the way it was,
Right.
is that it sort of by default makes that the only way people are going to
I
think
know.
about changing
And it
charter,
was
where,
very little education about all of it, really.
yeah, and I don't know that it is the best way to change or
I agree
even
with you.
review the
Yeah.
charter.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And that's actually one thing where I would
Okay.
probably apply to be on, but
Good. And you should
we'll
be.
see.
And we have about
Well,
half a
I think
minute
so.
left
Right.
for this, half a minute left for this segment. And
Yeah,
so we will we'll show some of your.
yeah, we'll talk a little bit about wandering here, what else,
Yeah.
what have you. There are a few other things, obviously, bike lanes and stuff are
Bike
still on
lanes,
the,
you
and
can't leave that out, right? Yeah.
yeah,
And
lots
then,
of other sort of hot
oh,
topics in the town.
trash carts. Too. Yeah.
And the trash carts were, so, the promise
Right.
change is coming up soon.
That's right.
So.
Okay.
All right, so we'll see
we
you
will
in
see you in about
3 minutes.
a few minutes. Bye.
Right.